afternoon, everybody. It's Toby Beth Johnson with Burnt Store Title of Southwest Florida and Abby Hamilton, your realtor next door with Peacock Premier Properties, bringing you episode 5 of Moving Parts. Today's special guest is Nicole Killian. She's the owner of SUP Englewood. SUP Englewood offers rentals and guided tours led by Florida Master Naturalist Guides. Stand-up paddleboard and kayak the Gulf Islands of Manasota Key, Don Pedro Island, and Boca Grande. Enjoy up-close encounters with wildlife with one of the best area-rated things to do. So stay tuned and find out how you can paddle your way into Florida's wildlife.
I'm Abby Hamilton, realtor with Peacock Premier Properties, the realtor next door, and I am partnered with Burnt Store Title of Southwest Florida. And today, on this beautiful Tuesday, we have Nicole Killian with SUP Englewood, stand-up paddleboarding and kayak rentals as well. So thank you so much for coming today. Did I leave anything out?
Not really. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I think it's going to be great for listeners and viewers to hear a little bit more about what we have in our community that if they haven't, they can take advantage of, or especially with everyone loves to have someone in Florida because that's somewhere they can hang out and stay. So when they come and visit, your business, which we'll get into, will be a huge highlight for them while they're here. So
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what your business is.
Sure. So I run SUP Englewood, and we really specialize in taking people out to the Gulf Islands. So that's Don Pedro, Boca Grande, Manasota Key, really all the places you want to be. Mm-hmm. So crystal clear water, up close encounters with dolphins and manatees, all the things that people really want to see and experience while they're here.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than boating tours. Just in the sense that you can be closer to animals. They come a little closer to you. We're quieter in the water. So you have that really up close, quiet approach to the mangroves. And it's just really special to be out there.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. It makes me so like, okay, let's go. Where do you guys leave from when you're like starting the tour?
Yeah, so we use a few different locations.
Okay.
The highlight of coming with us is that we have some mobility. So we have box trucks, we have big trailers, so we can go into county parks, state parks, and really give people the best of this area. So really going into those areas that are honestly, they're kind of hard. Like, you know, we have to commute a lot of equipment a long way to get it down to the water. It's not really set up that,
So someone with a boat and a trailer, it wouldn't really be as easy where you guys can kind of navigate through there to give them more of a personal experience.
That, and it's also hard for other companies to come in that don't have maybe like, you know, the equipment that we do to get into these parks and stuff. So that's kind of the highlight of coming with us. And it really is special places, you know, like all those county parks and all those state parks, they're natural, they're undeveloped. So you're not just next to homes the whole time, you're really out in nature and, you know, experiencing all the wildlife.
That's so cool. So in an area that's growing so much, you can still feel like you're in a whole nother world, being surrounded by all the nature that's still there and preserved.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And how long have you been in the area doing this? Or so let's go in a little bit of that, because obviously it's one thing to just look up places like I want to go here, but it's another thing knowing a local or someone who's been here a long time that can be like, those are what's publicized, but I know the good spots.
Exactly. So I actually grew up in Englewood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm, you know, very local, homegrown girl.
Yep.
And so I do know all the nooks and crannies of this area, which is special in and of itself. But how I actually got into this was really the public. Like, I couldn't take my paddleboard to the beach without, I couldn't take it off of the car. I mean, it was crazy. Like, people would be stopping me like, hey, where did you rent this? How do I buy one? How do I get into this? I ended up doing free lessons on the beach. And just on Englewood Beach, because so many people were asking me, and I loved seeing people get into the sport. And, you know, that was just before me ever, being a certified instructor. I was just, going out on my own board, doing
Because I
my
feel
own
like
thing.
paddleboarding is kind of new. Like, I mean, surfing was always out there, but it kind of, when would you say it evolved and became more I mean, obviously you started before it was really popular at that point, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. So it was starting to come onto the scene in like that 2010 time frame. So that's around the time I started to get into paddleboarding. And then I didn't actually launch the company until 2012. So yeah, I started in 2012. I had to take a little bit of a break because I had some health stuff come up. Okay. But it was really nice to come back. So I just relaunched, and yeah, we've been going strong.
So do you need to have any certifications to do, or are there certain ones that you're like, I want to have this to really set me apart from other businesses in the area?
Sure. So I'll tell you, I have so many certifications. Actually, it's hard to remember everything.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
So when I first got started, I went into like lifeguarding and water rescue because I really wanted to be able to keep everyone safe that went out on tours with me.
Makes total sense.
And then my next certification that I received was in paddle fit. Okay. And paddle fit is really cool because it's technique based. So it's all about, how to row properly and efficiently so that you're not wearing yourself out, which is really important because you don't want to go so far and not be able to return. Mm-hmm. You don't want to get wind blown and not be able to get back to where you came from. So that's where learning the proper techniques so that way it's easier on your body, it's easier on,
that's so
getting back.
I would never have thought about it, but now that you say that, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. And especially with you having such an age range and ability range, I mean, you're dealing with all types of people that it's good. Right. Those little things can really alter. I mean, you don't want to get halfway through the tour and then I'm sure it's happened where you're like struggling to get people to come back or whatever. But.
Yeah, well, and that's where like being a guide, like I have to always assess my crew. Like I have to see like, what's everyone's abilities? What's the wind doing? What's the tide doing? How's everyone progressing? There's a lot of things that happen up here.
So listeners and viewers, that is what sets you apart as just one thing is you're thinking behind the scenes. We always say in real estate, prevent future problems by like what you're planning ahead of time. And you're already in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, there's a storm on the verge here, low tide, high tides, all of those things can really make a difference.
Well, and it's also like knowing what are people, going to struggle with. Okay. Right? So it's like, anyone can do this sport. Mm-hmm. Absolutely anyone. Like, I mean, I've taught every age. I've taught, every different abilities. I hate to use the word disabilities, but so different abilities. Mm-hmm. And that's really important to know is everyone can do this, but, sometimes there's certain struggles, like weight, whether you're really light or if you're really heavy, there can be, different issues for both. Like really light people are going to blow really fast in the wind and have to work really hard. Yeah.
It's going to take that upper to
bring them back. It's going to be a lot of technique. I got to teach those people technique right off the bat. Like, hey, this is how we're going to do this. Okay. So that you're not like struggling so much. But then if you're, like my size or larger, it's going to be harder to balance. Okay. So, and that's okay. That's just part of it. And part of, stand-up paddleboarding is knowing like, we're not there to put pressure on ourselves. We're there to have a good time, experience wildlife. And so I say everyone can do this. It can be sit. It could be stand. The S in stand-up paddle can be sit or stand. Like there's no pressure on that.
Well, and I think, I don't know, just how you presented that was so well that I just feel like it does. I mean, because some people will never branch out because they're so worried about, I'm not going to be able to do it or I'm not comfortable or all of these things. And you just kind of helped alleviate a lot of those worries simply by saying, hey, from the beginning, I'm already trying to help you feel more comfortable so that you know that you'll be able to do it. That's not even going to be a worry, so you can really take in the full experience.
Well, and it's like I want it to be like a relaxed experience for people. Like they're coming out to have fun and they have their own anxieties. Some people are scared of the water, what's in the water, and that's really...
Yeah, the other thing about what's in the water, that's a whole nother...
You get a lot of questions. Are there alligators? Like, do I have to worry about sharks? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, so I mean, have you seen crazy things? I mean, I'm sure you have.
I've seen a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
I've definitely seen a lot of things.
So let's hear a few of, like,
I don't want to scare people,
but
I've seen a lot of things.
I'm sure you've had really cool experiences of things too. So just to show listeners and viewers, what are some things that you have seen that, like you said, on a boat you might not, or even if I'm a beach goer, I'm on the sand, I'm not going to see some of that wildlife that's in the water submerged a little bit further.
All right. So the things that you're not going to see on the beach, it's like that's a really wide gamut. Because on the beach, it's like sometimes you'll get a passing manatee or dolphin. But when you're out in the bay, like all of a sudden you can have a manatee just pushing you.
Wow.
I mean, manatees are super elusive. For a 1,000-pound animal, you think you're going to see this thing, coming from
a graceful
like,
giant.
long way away. But honestly, they hold their breath for up to 20 minutes.
Wow.
And they can just sneak up on you, which is crazy. And like no one expects it. So I mean, that's probably like one of the coolest things is when that happens. And so as a guide, like I have to do a lot of reading the water. I have to look for their tail prints.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I have to look for manatee farts. They control their buoyancy with flatulence. So
you'll learn all sorts of stuff on this.
I'm gonna have to like get you a video of manatee farts. Wow, that's a real thing.
Yeah, when we do our quarterly recaps, we should definitely Toby Beth, let's go on a tour. So we really do plan on doing highlights, and we'll be on that tour, and we'll get the footage for you guys.
Yeah, I actually have videos. I'm gonna have to go through and like find them for you. I swear, it's so funny. So like sometimes you'll just see like jet bubbles coming up, and it's like, all right, there's a manatee submerged under here for sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's like weird things. Like, and you would just paddle over that and be like, oh, there must be a fish or something down there. And, but experience will tell you otherwise. So
neat.
Yeah.
So how do you choose your routes for either is it time of year or they're just kind of like, you're just like, okay, I want to change and you change it up. How would you kind of pick out the routes?
There's so much that goes into that. So seasonally, we have different battles, right? Okay. So like, let's talk about summer real quick because we're in it. It's hot. I mean, like, and I try to tell people, like, listen, it's really hot. No, it's brutal. Like, our heat index has been, like,
insane.
115 by the afternoon. So I'll get a lot of calls for, like, hey, can we go out this afternoon? And it's like, man, you're going to get out there for, like, an hour and be toast. Yeah. And on top of that, the afternoons, we have to worry about summer storms, things like that.
Could turn into a torrential downpour.
A big issue. So I really advise doing morning paddles this time of year. It's much more enjoyable all the way around. You escape a lot of that seasonal weather, and you get the cooler part of the day, and it really gives people the best experience on the water. We also have really high tides in summer, which if people are seeking mangrove tunnels, that's something you really have to look at to make sure you have clearance for your head.
Okay.
So there is some of that I have to plan for as far as routes go. Locations, we can really highlight any location this time of year. In winter, it's a different story. So we have extreme low tides in winter. And that, unfortunately, will sometimes limit some of our locations. Okay. Also, in winter months, we get really high winds, and they're usually straight from the north. So at that point, honestly, like Stump Pass is a great place that I highlight. I have a few spots that I have to really monitor, like winds and tides for. But basically, I watch all this stuff for everyone. So no one has to know any of this. They can just kind of book. Yeah. And I do all the reading on the weather, and, if anything needs to be changed, like I make that phone call and get everything organized for people. So it's best to just pick a date and a time and then let me do the rest.
Okay. Yeah. So let you worry about it.
It kind of works out. It kind of works out better that way sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I bet too, it's just kind of like lets people go with the flow. Yeah. And you're just you're obviously your goal is to make sure they have the best time. Exactly. So you're like, what's going to give us those best options?
Exactly. And, where's the best, marine life? Like manatees are seasonal with us, right? So really making sure that we're able to get, people to see dolphins in the winter is important because I want people to have some kind of mammals while they're out there and, see some wildlife.
Yeah. Well, that's just really cool. I've tried to go in the past, but I think the weather didn't. I can't remember what time of year, but the weather didn't work out. So I'm excited to get back and try it. So
yeah, we got to get you out there. I can't remember if it was wind or if it was a thunderstorm.
It might have been wind.
Yeah,
I think it was supposed to be the fall, and I think the wind picked up or whatever. Which I mean, it makes sense. It's gonna be hard to. You can get somewhere quick, but getting back is not gonna be easy.
Exactly. And so some days, like in fall, like the winds will blow 25, 30 miles an hour, and that's a lot of resistance. Okay. So the biggest thing is then like the enjoyment factor. Like, sometimes you could go in that wind, but it's like you're just doing a workout. And then you can't read the water as well. Like, I can't read the water as well because there's just too many ripples at that point.
Okay.
So you're not going to be as likely to see mammals and things like that, or at least identify where they are in the water. So that can obviously interrupt or maybe not give the best experience possible. So that's part of the reason why we have like wind limitations. So it's like your experience as far as wildlife viewing, and then also like physically, you know, how much of a workout are we try to give people, you know? That's kind of a
Do you guys go
thing.
in like shallow areas too where they can get off the board? Or
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So different sandbars.
Or kayaks, I should say.
Yeah,
too.
or kayaks. So, I mean, all the locations feature either like a barrier island that we can stop off at, or a beach, or a sandbar, something cool to kind of like, you know, walk around, get out, just have a break from, you know, sitting or standing, whatever, you know, people are paddling. And those areas are super cool because you can find sea stars and sand dollars and hermit crabs and sea urchins and all that stuff.
Which is great because you really don't see a lot of that if you're not in that kind of unique experience. Yeah,
you really have to be in the estuary for that. You need to be in the seagrass and, you know, really see where everything is.
I feel like you've posted pictures of seahorses before too.
I have. They're a little bit more rare.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm honestly, I'm a little sad when they're like detached and kind of floating because it's like, all right, you lost your home. They don't swim very far, you know. So, but it does happen. So every now and again, we'll catch one that's, you know, kind of floating along, and we'll have a cool moment for it. But yeah.
Well, you said you did the morning and the afternoon. Do you ever do like a sunset or evening, or you try to not do those? Or
yeah, I'll tell you honestly, it's kind of demanding because we start our days at like 7 in the morning. So to go until 9 at night and then start again the next day is a bit tough.
You mean you don't run 24 hours?
I do have to rest at some point. You
gotta sleep at some point. Or eat. How do you even eat?
Yeah, I usually like one meal a day.
In between, like bringing people back, you're like shovel food in.
I try to like pack that cooler.
When people want to go out, do they say, hey, can I bring a lunch? Or, hey, can I bring any items? What do you encourage or discourage? How do you present that when they want to?
Yeah, so we have some different time frames for tours. Honestly, most groups, they really do well and enjoy the 2 to 2.5 hour experience.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily need a lunch on, you know, that duration, but we encourage everyone to bring water. We provide bottled water to all of our guests, whether it's a rental or a tour.
Okay.
We also provide dry bags, so phones, keys, things like that.
Okay, that's
People
good.
can bring them if they want, or we can lock that stuff away inside our vehicles for people if they prefer not to. I always take out my phone and get photos for people so that way they get the highlights. And anyways, so I recommend snacks.
Okay.
If people want snacks, especially if they have little kids or maybe they have diabetes or something like that, they got to keep their blood sugar up. Anything that they need during that time frame, I say bring it. Sunscreen's a big one too.
Okay. Yep.
Hats. Clothes they don't mind getting wet, all that stuff.
Sure, like the long sleeve, like Columbia or sun shirts are popular too.
I recommend those. I'll tell you, a lot of my groups, they don't bring those out because I see a lot of vacationers and they're like, I want the sun. Yeah. And then we come back and we're maybe a little toasty.
Yeah, a little lobstery.
I bring sunscreen and I encourage sunscreen. I encourage to reapply while we're out there. Not everyone does it, but I certainly encourage it because I've seen the result otherwise. So I'm like the mom.
Yeah. I was going to say it, but you said it. I was like, there's always the mom in the group that's like, let's reply.
Sunscreen. Did you get your water? Like, all of those things.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. All right. Now, how many people do you usually bring on a tour, or do you do private tours if someone wanted a smaller experience? What does that look like typically?
Sure. So our experiences in general are smaller.
Okay.
So we keep it one guide to up to 8 vessels. You know, and really we try to do like one guide to 8 people. It kind of depends on, you know, what their ask is for like a private experience.
Okay.
To make sure that we're highlighting everything for them. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping that smaller group. It really helps so that you can hear everything on the tour, and we can really just have a tight knit situation on the water. Now we do take out larger groups, but what we do in those situations is we kind of break it up to different guides. So then you're all out on the water at once, but
there's different
different little sections, so you're all together. And then really, depending on whether someone's doing like a really big group on paddle boards or a really big group on kayaks or a mix, depends on what I recommend for locations. Because obviously, if it's people's first time on boards and it's a lot of people, I don't really want them next to boating lanes.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to maybe pick a
location. Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you're not floating into something you don't want to be next to while you're learning and stuff. So like if it's a really large group, we do accommodate that. I just do a different spot so that can be the full-on experience.
What does a private experience look like? And I mean, right now we were talking about, I'm like, being a local, I'm like, this would be a fun birthday, or you have family in town, you just make a whole thing out of it. Like, my wheels are turning in my sense. So hopefully yours are too, listeners. So what would that look like typically?
Yeah, so typically, you call, you book it, and you request a private experience, and then it's just your family.
Okay.
So the small groups are just, maybe your family plus another. And if you want it to just be your family, it's a little bit more. But then we just, have it be just your family.
Well, that sounds pretty
out
cool.
there on the water, yeah.
How much time I know you said in the beginning you work on, making sure people feel comfortable for those who haven't done it before, training them or showing them the techniques. How much time would you say you kind of spend on that before, or do you do it before you actually get in the water, or a combination of both? What does that part look like?
Yeah, so that part looks like, we call it a land lesson.
Okay.
So what we're doing during a land lesson is we're going over how do you steer the boat, right? So whether it's a paddleboard or a kayak, we kind of have separate lessons for both of those because they're different oars, right? So a kayak's going to be a double-ended paddle, and then a paddleboard's a single edge to the paddle. So there's different intricacies for paddling and steering. And obviously, once you launch people, if it's their first time, you want them to practice a little bit near shore. So there is a piece of that that's on land and on the water, as well as, once they're out with a guide, we're going into more depth. But the other things we cover during a land lesson are going to be navigational markers, and really giving space, like, for mammals. And then, like different laws. Like Florida just changed the law this year.
Oh, okay.
So now paddleboards and kayaks, you have to stay out of the marked channel. You're allowed to cross it, but you can't just meander through, or we could get a ticket.
Okay.
It was recently just written into statute that you have to not interfere with boating traffic. So that's kind of strong language, So effectively, you want to be using the sidewalk. And so my reference point's usually like a bike lane.
Yeah.
And you want to just avoid as much as you can these boaters out on the water.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And that's, another reason that would set you apart is you're up to date with the laws and things to keep people. Obviously your goal is to keep people safe, but nobody wants a ticket.
No one wants a ticket, exactly. And so we know all the Coast Guard rules and requirements. We're fully licensed and insured. And that's something new this year too, is that there's actually a licensing program now through the state of Florida. So we're on the up and up with all of that. And it was really interesting because Florida didn't do, in my opinion, maybe like the best job getting that info out.
Okay.
Because it was a big shift. It's now we're classified the same as a boat rental company.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a big change for paddleboards and kayaks.
Well, nice thing is you have the years of experience to kind of tap new information on top where it's not as quite overwhelming for some that are just getting into it. You've known it, done it, and now you're just fine-tuning to what the changes are made.
Exactly.
Well, we appreciate your time. We'll wrap it up here in a few, but life jackets, is that something that you require, or it's an age or a size thing? What is your rule on that?
So life vests are required by statute to be on a vessel.
Okay.
And then really depending on age, like children 5 and under, they have to wear a life vest all the time. And then, really, I leave it up to parents if they're older than that, if they want their kids to wear them or not. They are, obviously being, supervised during the whole thing. So that's, parental discretion. I don't require that people physically wear them just because, maybe they have a discomfort to that. That's up to them.
But
on
they
a
have them
paddleboard.
on. They have them on
the
site.
board.
ready.
Yeah, they have
Yep.
them on the board or on the kayaks. And then on a paddleboard, I do require that people wear the leash because that's your largest flotation device.
Mm-hmm.
You always, if you fall, you always have to return back to your board. That's where probably any accident that you hear about, that's where that comes in, is that people forget to return to the board, maybe try to swim to shore. So that's probably the biggest highlight there. Is
Okay.
just making sure people remember that.
Well, I feel like, if listeners want to reach out to your business, you are a
Yeah.
great one to choose. And we'll include their information and make sure that they know where to reach you and how to contact you, because
Sure.
not only do you know the area so well, you've also just become so well versed in what's required by law, what safety measures, concerns for every person, no matter what age, what size, what ability they have. And I think that's just huge when finding a local, reputable
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And you're clearly doing a great job with it. So
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I hope to hear from some people.
to finish off, what has been the most magical either thing you've seen or just what's so rewarding about the career that you've chose to embark on with this business?
Honestly, for me, it's I do love these amazing encounters that I have with wildlife, and that's an incredible experience in itself, and I can't take that away. But the biggest reward is being able to give people a piece of that,
Mm-hmm.
and then also like helping them to get into a new sport and really seeing that joy like light up. Like for some people, they found their sport
Mm-hmm.
once I've helped them with this lesson,
Neat.
and so that really is like the biggest piece for me.
Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
special. I absolutely love our Florida wildlife, and I'm excited to now make sure I can go on a tour here soon, because
Yeah.
it's something you don't get to see every day, and especially you have to go out and find those spots, and you clearly know where those spots are, and
Yeah.
getting there is not so easy, so why not use an expert in the area? So anyways, thank you, listeners. We appreciate you being a part of our show today, and thank you, Nicole, for being willing to. It was a hike for her to come out here, but we really appreciate it, because it's just such a wonderful thing having great tour guides and to showcase where we call home. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Hey folks, thanks for sticking around. Toby Beth Johnson once again with Burnt Store Title of Southwest Florida with your Tuesday title tip. When you are buying or selling a home and you're working with your agent, please be sure you get the full story on those property taxes. In some cases, in the non-ad valorem section of your property taxes, that seller may have what's called a PACE loan. That is your energy or Y green loan for energy improvements around the home. They attach to your property taxes but also show up as a lien in your title commitment. This will have to be satisfied, this loan, of course, will have to be satisfied at closing out of the seller proceeds, does not transfer to the property owner. Once again, folks, PACE loan, if you have re-energized your home with a new roof, windows, or doors, will show up on your non-ad valorem taxes. Please be sure to let your buyers and sellers know this will be satisfied at closing. Thanks for tuning in.